Long ago, in the valley of Nyamburu, life moved like gentle river water, soft, steady, unhurried, as if time itself dozed beneath the acacia shade. Children ran between ancient baobab roots, their laughter echoing against the hills as they chased the evening sun, turning every shadow into a game, every fallen leaf into treasure. Elders told stories beneath flickering firelight, their voices weaving worlds of heroes, trickster spirits, and the first dawn. Sparks climbed into the night sky like tiny fireflies returning to the stars. Hunters sang to thank the forest spirits for guiding their footsteps and steadying their aim. Their melodies drifted with the wind, mingling with the scent of wild honey and wood smoke. Women pounded grain with rhythmic harmony, their mortars rising and falling like the heartbeat of the valley. Between each thud came soft chatter, laughter, and secrets exchanged like precious seeds. Buffalo roamed freely at the outskirts, moving in slow, thunderous herds that shook the ground just enough to remind everyone of nature's power. Birds danced upon tamarind trees, their wings flashing like shards of sunlight as they traded songs with distant hills. Peace wrapped the valley like a warm cloth, comforting and familiar, stitched into every dawn and every dusk. Every heart beat with gratitude. Every path was safe to walk. Every night was filled with laughter, stories, and the soft hum of crickets. No one imagined danger was near, not in a place where life felt eternal, unbreakable, and sheltered by the mountains. And one morning, a whisper drifted from the northern plains, thin as smoke, cold as a forgotten memory. It carried unease before anyone could name it. Shepherd boys tending their goats paused mid-song. They heard metal clashing in the distance, a sharp, unnatural rhythm that did not belong to grazing fields or friendly neighbors. Old McKenna, whose senses were sharp as moonlight, claimed she smelled burning grass. She raised her head to the wind, her eyes narrowing at the faint bitterness hidden in the breeze. Hunters returned early with worry in their eyes. Their steps were heavy, their quivers untouched. They spoke in low voices of footprints not made by animals, and distant shapes moving in formation. Rumors carried the weight of unseen storms. Each retelling added a new layer of fear, until even those who had not heard the whisper directly felt it in their bones. The village council met under the elder tree, its broad branches swaying as if listening. Faces that once glowed with the ease of routine now furrowed in concern. People feared an approaching threat, one they could not yet see, but could already feel pressing against the horizon. Mothers clutched their youngest children, drawing them close as if warmth alone could keep danger away. Warriors sharpened spears in silence. No chance, no boasting, only the hard scrape of stone against metal echoing through the dusk. Even animals moved restlessly that night. Dogs paced. Cattle refused to settle. Birds left the trees earlier than usual, disappearing into the clouds as though fleeing something unseen. The wind carried a warning. Whisper by whisper, heart by heart, Nyamburu began to tremble. The enemy arrived with dust rising behind them, a rolling cloud that swallowed the horizon and dimmed the morning sun. Long before their shapes became clear, the ground thrummed with the pounding of hooves and marching feet. Their faces were painted with ash, streaked in patterns that made them look half human, half spirit. Eyes cold as river stones glinted beneath heavy brows. Their chants shook the earth. Deep, guttural, and rhythmic, the sound grew like thunder, rattling rooftops and sending birds fleeing from the trees. They carried curved blades glinting like lightning, steel catching the sun in quick, violent flashes. Some bore shields decorated with skulls. Others wore cloaks stitched with animal hides. Their leader rode a black stallion, its manner wild and untamed. He sat tall and silent, a presence heavier than the army behind him. Around his neck hung trophies no villager dared identify. Villagers hid inside mud huts, peering through cracks and trembling at every thud of approaching footsteps. Mothers clutched infants to their chests, whispering prayers older than memory. The invaders demanded surrender, their voices booming across the huts like war drums. The order was repeated in several tongues, each sharper than the last. No one dared speak. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the valley itself held its breath. Fear rippled through every heart, an icy wave that left even the bravest unsteady. The village chief stepped forward, stepping into the open square with deliberate calm. His shadow stretched long against the dust. His hands trembled, but his eyes did not. He met the leader's gaze without flinching, the staff of Nyamburu gripped firmly in his palm. He refused to bow. Chief Borongo raised his staff toward the sky, invoking the spirits of his ancestors. The sacred would hummed faintly, catching the attention of young and old alike. He begged the warriors to spare the innocent, his voice steady despite the storm gathering around him. Each word carried history, wisdom, and the weight of every life in the valley. He spoke of peace and brotherhood, of shared water from the river, of paths crossed without conflict, of the land wide enough for all. His plea spread through the air like a final attempt to calm a raging fire. But the invaders laughed like hyenas, sharp and cruel. Their laughter cracked the fragile silence and stabbed at the hearts of those listening from behind doors. They surrounded the chief, forming a tight ring of steel and fury. Their boots kicked up dust that settled on Borongo's shoulders like a warning. Torches hissed in the wind, flames bending sideways as if trying to flee the tension building in the square. Children cried behind closed doors, their muffled sobs piercing deeper than any blade. The warriors demanded tribute, grain, livestock, and young captives. Their leader lifted his chin, expecting quick obedience. Borongo refused once more. This time his voice thundered through the village, echoing off mud walls and rising into the hills. His courage filled the villagers with hope. A flicker of strength stirred in their chests, pushing back a small piece of the fear that had swallowed them. But the threat loomed large, too large for courage alone. The storm had arrived, and something greater was needed. Something ancient. Something powerful. Something that had not awakened in generations. Elder Nyamburu stepped forward with shaking steps, leaning heavily on her carved walking stick. Though her back was bent with age, a strange brightness lit her eyes, one that had not been seen in years. She remembered a prophecy from her childhood, spoken to her by her grandmother on a night when the stars shone so brightly they seemed ready to drop into mortal hands. The memory surfaced now with the clarity of a long-dormant flame. It spoke of a deity who slept beneath the hills, a spirit older than the valley itself, older than the first dawn, older even than the rivers that carve the land. Some called the being Ruhanga Wa Pipo, keeper of winds. Others whispered the name only in stories told to children. A god of wind, protection, and unseen power. A force that moved softly in times of peace, but roared like 1,000 storms when the land was threatened. The prophecy claimed the deity would awaken in crisis, rising when darkness crept too close, when the valley cried out, when the voices of many became one. But only if the people called together. Only if their hearts were united. Only if fear did not silence them. None had tried to invoke this deity before. The prophecy had been treated like a tale, a remnant of an older world. Generations had passed without need for such power. But now the moment had arrived. And the shadows closing in made even the elders tremble. The villagers gathered at Nyamburu's side, sensing something ancient stirring in her words. Mothers stepped out of their hiding places, hunters lowered their heads in reverence, and children clutched one another's hands. Hope flickered like a spark, small, fragile, but bright enough to push back the edge of despair. The villagers ran toward Mount Karubi, the sacred hill whose slopes shimmered with old stories. Some said the mountain breathed. Others said it listened. Warriors tried to follow them, but were slowed. Their steps grew heavy, as though the earth itself turned soft beneath their feet. Strange winds pushed them back, winds that did not howl or rage, but pressed firmly against shields and armor like an invisible guardian. Dust swirled around their ankles and refused to settle. Elders carried ritual drums, their skins stretched tight like the anticipation in the air. Each drum had been passed down through generations, the carvings on their sides telling forgotten histories. Mothers held calabashes of milk, offerings of purity and life. The milk sloshed gently with each hurried step, glowing faintly in the muted sunlight. Hunters brought sacred herbs, bundles of dried leaves tied with fiber twine, their scent sharp and cleansing, powerful enough to call spirits or drive them away. Children carried small stones of blessing, smooth tokens given by grandparents at birth. Each stone bore a painted symbol, worn slightly by years of holding and hoping. Everyone stood around the ancient shrine, a ring of stones half buried in soil, the center marked by a towering rock shaped like an open hand. Moss clung to its fingers, vines wrapped its base. Silence fell like a giant feather, drifting down softly but smothering all sound. No one dared shuffle or whisper. Even the smallest child stilled. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Leaves froze mid-flutter. The mountain loomed above them, not threatening, but watching. No one knew what would happen, whether the deity would hear them, whether the old prophecy was truth or only legend. But all prayed with trembling voices and steady hearts, prayed for courage, for unity, for an answer. And beneath the earth, something ancient began to stir. Elder Nyamburu struck the first drumbeat, slow, deliberate, carrying the weight of centuries. Boom! The sound rippled outward, rolling across the valley, waking the air, stirring the dust. It echoed through mountains and sky, bouncing off the cliffs of Karubi like a returning heartbeat. Others joined, forming a thunderous rhythm. The drum spoke in a language older than words, calling to the unseen, summoning what lay sleeping beneath stone and soil. Women poured milk upon the altar stone, the white liquid cascading down its grooves like a river of moonlight. As it touched the earth, steam rose, a whisper of warmth in the cool air. Hunters lit incense and herbs. Spirals of fragrant smoke climbed into the sky, twisting like ghostly vines. The smell of sage, resin, and wild leaf filled the clearing, chasing away fear like a gentle hand on the shoulder. The ground began to tremble gently. Pebbles rattled. Dust leaped. The old shrine stones vibrated in harmony with the drums. A warm wind swirled around the circle, stronger with each passing moment. It tugged at hair, stirred skirts and cloaks, and lifted children's whispers into the sky. The gusts carried something alive, something aware. The baobabs rustled with ancient whispers. Their massive trunks creaked like old spirits waking from sleep. Leaves shimmered and danced though there was no storm. Light emerged from cracks in the earth, thin, golden threads at first, then widening into a radiant glow that illuminated every face. The glow pulsed like a sleeping heart finding its rhythm again. A soft hum filled the air, vibrating through bones, drums, leaves, and breath. In that moment, everyone felt the presence, gentle yet overwhelming, familiar yet vast. The deity was waking. None dared blink. None dared breathe too loudly. All felt the world shifting. A towering figure of shimmering wind rose from the earth, forming slowly like a great storm gathering shape. Its body swirled like smoke yet glowed like dawn, translucent and bright, shifting through colors of the sky, pale gold, soft blue, storm gray. Its eyes burned with knowledge older than time, deep, swirling pools where lightning flickered like distant memories. When those eyes swept across the circle, every villager felt seen, known, measured. The villagers fell to their knees, overwhelmed by awe. Some covered their faces, others stretched their hands toward the figure. Even the proudest warriors bowed their heads in reverence. The deity's voice sounded like many rivers, flowing, layered, powerful. Each word washed over the crowd like waves, vibrating in their chests. It asked why it had been summoned. Its tone was not angry, nor gentle. It was ancient, patient, curious, as if it had been dreaming for ages and now blinked into waking world. Chief Borongo stepped forward bravely, though his legs trembled beneath him. His staff glimmered faintly, reacting to the power that filled the air. He spoke of the invading warriors, of the dust clouds curling behind them, of their curved blades, of their cruel laughter. His voice wavered with grief for his people but steadied with love. He pleaded for the community's protection, not for glory or revenge, but for the lives hiding in mud huts, for the children clutching stones of blessing, for the elders whose stories shaped the valley's soul. The deity listened silently. Its swirling form stilled. The glowing patterns along its limbs dimmed and brightened like thoughtful breaths. The wind paused. All nature waited. Then the deity nodded, a simple motion that sent a flutter of power sweeping across the shrine like a warm breeze before a storm. The hidden wind had agreed. The deity demanded proof of unity. "Do you stand as one people?" it asked, its voice rumbling like distant thunder. Fear flickered among the villagers. Shadows trembled across their faces as the deity's radiant form brightened, illuminating every doubt in their hearts. Some wondered if they had the courage to answer truthfully. Others feared punishment for any weakness, real or imagined. A few simply stared at the ground, unsure whether they belonged at all. But Chief Borongo stepped forward, lifting his carved staff high. The ancient would caught the light, glowing as though awakened from sleep. "We stand together," he said, and his voice steadied the trembling crowd. Slowly, one by one, villagers reached for each other. Rough hands found smaller ones. Elders leaned on children. Hunters clasped the arms of mothers who carried infants on their hips. A chain of lives stretched across the shrine's clearing, fragile at first, then firm, then unbreakable. Their voices rose in a single chant. At first it wavered, thin as smoke. Then it gained strength, weaving into a harmony older than memory. The ground glowed beneath their feet. Light seeped through the cracks of the earth like dawn rising from below. The deity listened. Its swirling form shimmered with colors found nowhere in the mortal world. Gold that bent like water, blue that hummed with warmth, red threaded with starlight. At last, the deity smiled, and motes of light drifted from its expression like falling petals. The test was passed. The deity lifted its arms toward the sky, and the air responded like a loyal beast awakened. A deep roar surged across the horizon. Winds blasted from every direction, as if the world's edges had folded inward. Trees bent low. Loose soil spiraled upward. Leaves burst from the canopy like green sparks thrown from a fire. Clouds twisted above, braiding themselves into vast, powerful shapes. Lightning flickered inside the core of the forming tempest, curling like serpents through the spinning grey. The villagers watched in awe, clutching one another as the sky rewrote itself. The deity's presence thickened the air with ancient authority. With a single gesture, the deity commanded the winds into a single storm. The storm obeyed instantly. It gathered, condensed, and hovered above the shrine, immense, circular, and pulsing like a living heart awaiting instruction. The ground vibrated like a war drum struck by invisible hands. The air brimmed with raw, unshaped power, the breath before a great shout. Every villager felt it, a shift in the world, a promise in the sky. War was coming, and the winds themselves would choose a side.